Hello and welcome back to our tutorial on making a robot and then integrating it into some 2D video. So this part we're going to create the foot for the robot, and this is straightforward enough. Obviously we're designing it so we can make it as complex as we like, but so this has 12 verts and it's adding a cylinder. The only complex part of this is to just make sure that it's believable, that it is a large enough foot to support the weight of a large object above it. So GZ, and we'll bring that to about there, and then I'm going to make a slightly larger platform here at the bottom, and bring this in. Oops. So I'm trying to create the impression here that there's a part of this that can rotate. Okay, so that this piece here at the bottom can rotate separately to what's above it, and we may actually change the proportions of that. So let's go GZ, move that down to there. Okay, and we'll do our normal thing with this. We will put in a subdivision surface modifier, set it to be smooth, and then we'll go back and fix it. So add in a loop cut, and add one in there, and here, and there. Now, that's fine for now. Okay, so this is our sort of, let's give this a name, we'll call it ankle strut.l. Now, so what we want coming out of this is kind of toes that are capable of holding up our mech. We want them to have some sort of maneuverability that is kind of consistent with the mechanics here, so something that maybe uses a piston to drive the toe up and down. So let's work on that. So first of all, let's make a ring here that will house a piston. So I'm going to go add a loop cut in here, and then I'm going to go Shift D, P, and I have this here, so I'm going to call this ankle ring. We'll scale it up a tiny bit. Again, its origin is there, so we're going to edit mode. Select it all, and scale it up, and then EZ. So let's select all of that, set it to be smooth, Control N to flip normals if necessary, then Control OR and Control OR. Okay, so we've got this ring. I might make it a little bit bigger. Okay, now on this ring we are going to add in a connector that we can put a piston from. So I'm going to take, try and use the existing geometry that we have. So we have these two here that are staring straight out to the front. So I'm going to go E and then escape, scale them say 0.8, and then extrude out to the front just by eye, extrude again, and I'm going to go SY0, and that just flattens that area there. Okay, so I've created this piece coming out the front. What I actually want to do is I want to kind of tear it in two so there's a gap. So I'm going to put in a loop cut and a loop cut, and then I can afford to, I can delete both of these. And now to join these back up, I'm going to select these two here and press F to create a face. And in fact, I can just create. You have to be careful you've picked the right ones here, and I have not. So I'm going to delete that face I've just created. So delete faces. So yeah, just be careful you select the right verts, so the ones out to the front. So that one and that one. So face, and face, and we'll go into wireframe mode to make sure we select this correctly. So that one, and that one, and that one, and then 4 over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now again we just need to add in a loop cut and a loop cut, and happy days. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to go GY, I'm going to go extrude and scale, and extrude and scale, and extrude and scale, and so now we have this protruding piece, which is fine. And again, we're going to duplicate. So I'm going to take this and go Shift D. Let's move it by eye, move it to here, and scale it down. So it's roughly in the middle, and then I'm going to scale it on X. Okay. Now, so this is going to be sort of the, I'll rename this in a minute. This is going to be our part of our piston. Now, I'm going to join this and this, so I'm going to go Control J. So now, oh, okay, let me just apply the mirror modifier on that first. Control J. Now, what I'm going to do with this ankle ring here is I am going to delete the geometry at the back. So all this geometry, so I can use a mirror modifier. So delete those verts. I'm going to select those two and those two. I'm going to go Shift S, cursor to selected. So the cursor is now equidistant and in the middle of this. And then in object mode, I'm going to say Object, Transform, Origin to 3D Cursor, and then I'm going to add a mirror modifier. And it's on Y that we need it this time. So now I've saved myself the trouble of modeling this back and forth. So now, so we have this ring on our ankle. So the next thing to do is we're going to make a toe that kind of protrudes at the front and one that comes at the back, and that has sort of a piston piece that connects it here, and also it connects to this central column. And we might just, I'm going to take this, I'm going to press V, which is cut basically. So it cuts and duplicates geometry. So I'm just going to lift this a little bit. And go to scale. Yeah, and you can just, it gives us a more convincing sort of end to this, and the inner I'll go scale it in, but then go GZ, bring it down. Okay. Now, so they're still the same object, they just look like they're two separate objects. Okay, so let's make these toes. So they need to be big enough to stabilize a large object above them. So I'm going to add a cube, and that's too big. So scale it down, and whoops, move it on Y. Move it forward to here, and let's look from the side. And we'll go GZ, and we're going to assume that this is our ground plane. So let's just add a ground plane. So I'm going to add a plane and go GZ, move it down to there. So now this needs to be smaller. So I want it to be just around the same height as this object here, and we can afford to scale this and then move it back down to the ground. And at its most basic, that's what we want to make. So a large kind of foot piece that's in the front of our leg. We will make it a little more visually appealing than that. So we'll scale this in. We'll give it sort of a base area, so again put in a loop cut, and then another loop cut, and select all of these. Now we're going to scale this on X, and scale it on Y. Just a little bit, so it's kind of got a base to it, so like a grip on the bottom of a shoe. And we'll move it back here. Okay, so that's it at its most basic. What we want to do is we want to add something similar to what we have here, so that we can have a piston sort of that'll lift it up, and then we're going to put in kind of a column that connects the two of these. So what I might need to do is just lift. So we can go GZ, lift this up a little bit. Okay. Okay, so let's work in a similar kind of method as we did up here. So I'm going to put in a series of loop cuts, and I'm going to add in one to there and one to there. Go to face select mode, and I'm going to select this and this. I'm going to extrude upward and extrude upward again, scale it a little bit, extrude up, scale, and scale. Okay, so again we can make this smooth, add a subdivision surface modifier, and we have a whole bunch of loop cuts to add into this to make it look a bit more respectable. And so now there we go. So that's not too bad. It's not high art, but actually I'm going to get rid of those too. I might add loop cut that way instead. Now, and we want to define that point a little bit better. Okay, so fairly simple, but you know, it'll work. So I'm going to add a loop cut in here into wireframe mode, and we will go to vertex select, and okay. Again, anything I'm doing here is just for aesthetics. So as we did before, I'm going to select this. I'm going to go Shift D and duplicate it and bring it down and scale it. And scale it on X. Okay. And then we want to repeat what we have up here. So this object and this object. So we're going to go Shift D, and we're just going to go S for scale. Now we don't want them to do that, scale individually, so we're going to go active element. So it's this is the last one selected, so it's the active element, and then S will scale everything relative to that. So we'll move this into position here. And scale it down again so that it's a fit. Now before we start rotating, I want it to rotate around that point, so I go Shift S, cursor to selected, and then tell it to rotate around the 3D cursor, and I want both of these to do that. So I'm going to rotate, and now, so I'm going to select this object here and deselect, deselect all its geometry. Now I can go E, and it'll extrude along the axis that it's pointing in, and then that has contacts there. So there's my piston setup in terms of its relationship between the foot and here, and the only other part I need to set up is sort of a cylinder that connects these two here. So I'm going to select the foot, and I'll select these guys here, and I'm going to extrude a little bit, and actually there's no need for me to do that, I'll just leave that. However, I will select this here, Shift S, cursor to selected. I'm going to add a cylinder with 12 verts and scale it down and rotate it 90 degrees and scale in edit mode. Vertex select, go GY and GY. Now I'm going to go smooth, modifier, subsurface, Control R. Okay, so they should be part of this object here. So I'm going to join them together. So once I've selected foot and this object here, I'm going to go Control J. Now, as before, I didn't apply the mirror modifier to that pin, so I'm going to apply mirror modifier. So the object I want to be, the parent is the last one selected, Control J, and they all become part of the same object. Okay, and the last thing I want to do is select these. Actually, I'm going to go in here. So the origin of that object is in the middle here, so I'm going to go Shift S, cursor to selected. Then I'm going to select the piston and the foot, I'm going to go up here, going to Shift D, and then or 180, and I'm rotating around the 3D cursor, and everything should be in the correct position. Okay, so what we have here then is a foot that can rotate in this direction. The toe can bend upwards with the use of the piston, and we have a slight sort of shock absorber here as well. This can move up and down, so it should be versatile enough, and in terms of scale should work with the rest of the leg. So we have a few things to rename here, so we're cube.001, etc. A few things to do to tidy up, and then of course we haven't colored anything in yet. It's all a generic grey, but for now that is the leg of our robot completed.